I used to think it was normal, that every family had a favorite, that love could still be love, even if it showed up lopsided. I'm not saying my parents didn't care about me. They did, in their own way. But from the beginning, it was obvious that my sister, Ella, was the sun around which our family revolved, and I was just orbiting. Ella was the golden child, bright, beautiful, always knowing exactly what to say to make people adore her. Teachers loved her. Neighbors asked about her. Even strangers at the grocery store would comment on her spark. And my parents? They fed off it. My mom lit up when Ella entered a room like she was seeing a celebrity. My dad called her his champ, his one-of-a-kind. I used to think those were harmless nicknames. But when you're the sister who never gets one, they start to feel like labels. Not her, not enough, not quite. It showed up in the little things first. Birthday parties where Ella got a magician and a petting zoo, and I got cupcakes in the backyard. School recitals where my mom would be in the front row, phone out, grinning like a pageant mom for Ella, and mysteriously stuck at work during mine. Every time I brought it up, they'd say I was imagining it. Don't be so dramatic, Iris, or we love you both the same. I learned early that if I didn't want to be labeled difficult, I had to swallow those feelings. So I did. But kids are perceptive, and silence doesn't erase patterns. It just traps you inside them. I became the quiet achiever. Good grades? Of course. I did my homework without being asked. I made my own lunch. I stopped expecting anyone to show up for me, so it wouldn't hurt when they didn't. And maybe that's when the narrative shifted. I wasn't just the second daughter. I was the responsible one. The one who didn't need help. The one who could handle it. At first, I wore it like a badge of honor. Independence. Maturity. Strength. But eventually, it started to feel like a punishment. Because while Ella was getting praise for the smallest things, posting a photo, getting AB+, remembering to text our mom back, I was expected to function like a full-grown adult trapped in a teenager's life. Nobody celebrated me. They just relied on me. And don't get me wrong, I didn't hate Ella. That would have been easier. But how do you stay close to someone whose success is always a reminder of what you weren't given? She wasn't cruel, just clueless. She floated through life like it was built for her, and in many ways, it was. She'd never had to ask for anything twice. And she didn't notice when I stopped asking altogether. I remember one afternoon during junior year, I overheard my mom on the phone with a friend talking about Ella's college applications. "We're setting aside money for Stanford," she said. "It's a big investment, but she deserves it." The way she said it, deserves, like it was obvious, like it was earned. And that was the first time I felt something crack deep inside me. A slow, quiet break. Not rage. Not jealousy. Just realization. I had already started working weekends at the coffee shop downtown to save for school. I didn't ask for help because part of me already knew what the answer would be. Or worse, that the question wouldn't even register. They say fairness isn't about treating everyone the same, but about giving people what they need. But when your needs are always ignored because you're strong, eventually you stop being seen as someone who needs anything at all. That was me. Second daughter. Second place. Since birth. Senior year was supposed to feel triumphant. I had survived high school, outworked everyone in my class, and built a life around self-sufficiency like it was a religion. I had perfect attendance, decent test scores, a portfolio of part-time jobs, and a list of extracurriculars I'd stitched together without a single ride or reminder from my parents. I didn't expect a parade when I got into college, but I thought, for once, maybe they'd surprise me. Maybe they'd see what I had done with almost nothing and meet me halfway. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, acceptance letter from my dream school trembling in my hand. It wasn't some Ivy League fantasy. It was a state university, affordable, practical, close enough to home that I could keep my part-time job and still crash on my childhood bed when I needed to. I had run the numbers myself. Budgeted. Calculated aid. I only needed a little bit to cover the gap. Just a little. I didn't even want the whole ride. Just enough to breathe. I handed the letter to my mom with this small flicker of hope in my chest. She read it quickly, eyes scanning like she was skimming a grocery list. Then she smiled, tight and polite. That's great, Iris. That's great. That was it. I waited. Silence. Do you think, I started, voice catching, you and Dad could help with some of the costs? Just a bit? I've been saving, but... Her face changed. Not anger. Worse, surprise. Like I had asked something completely foreign. Iris, you know things are tight right now. It was the way she said it, gentle, even rehearsed. I'd never heard that tone used on Ella. You're so responsible, she continued. You've always been the one who could figure things out. I could feel my throat close up. I nodded, but it felt like swallowing glass. Later that night, I overheard them in the living room. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I was coming downstairs to get my backpack. But I paused when I heard my name. She's asking for money now? My dad said, like I was some stranger off the street. She'll manage. She always has, my mom replied. We can't take from Ella's fund. That wouldn't be fair to her. Fair. That word again. They loved using it when it benefited Ella. It turns out they had been saving for years. Not in secret, just never in reference to me. Ella had a whole college fund with her name on it. They'd even bought her a car for campus. Used, sure, but still. Meanwhile, I was staring down $40,000 in loans and learning how to stretch a minimum wage paycheck across books, groceries, and rent. When I confronted them, tentatively, still hoping there was something I'd misunderstood, they didn't even deny it. Ella's program is more competitive, my dad said. She's not like you, my mom added. She's sensitive. She needs more support. That's when I realized they didn't see my resilience as something to admire. They saw it as a reason to give me less. Being capable had become my curse. I didn't cry in front of them. I waited until I was alone, head against the shower tiles, water turned too hot, hoping it would melt the disappointment off my skin. That night, I applied for 3 more scholarships and emailed my manager to ask for extra shifts. I never mentioned it again, and they never brought it up. It just became one more thing we didn't talk about. One more truth wrapped in silence. But the truth doesn't disappear. It accumulates. Quietly. In the pauses between calls, in the fake smiles at dinner, in the way you stop trusting people to love you without conditions. By the time I packed for college, I had stopped asking them for anything. Not money, not time, not care. And every time I saw Ella breeze through another semester with their full support, it was like watching a movie where the ending never changed, no matter how hard I wished I had been cast in a different role. They told me I was strong, that I could handle it. They were right. I could. But I never forgot that I shouldn't have had to. People love the idea of a self-made woman until they meet one. It sounds empowering, doesn't it? Strong. Fierce. The kind of phrase they put on mugs and Pinterest quotes. But what nobody tells you is that being self-made means learning how to cry between shifts, writing essays at 2 a.m. while your body screams for sleep, and eating canned soup 5 nights in a row because your bank account is at $12.47 and rent is due in 2 days. That was my life for 4 years. I moved into a shared apartment with 2 strangers and a broken heater. I had no furniture except a twin air mattress that sagged in the middle. I worked at a diner from 5 to 10 a.m. and attended lectures from 11 to 4. After class, I'd go straight to the library, where I could stay warm and use the Wi-Fi until closing. Then I'd go home, cook pasta or rice, whatever I could afford that week, and fall asleep in my coat. Every dollar had a job. Every hour had a purpose. There was no backup plan. Just me. I didn't tell my parents any of this. They called sometimes, not often. When they did, it was always the same. How's school? You're working too hard. Ella says hi. My mom would ask if I was eating enough like it was a joke. My dad would remind me to network more so I could get a good job when I graduated. I stopped trying to explain that I was networking with exhaustion, debt, and a campus job sorting mail. Ella, meanwhile, was thriving. She had a dorm room that looked like a catalog ad. She'd text me pictures of her weekend trips, rooftop brunches, and school events where she wore coordinated outfits with her sorority sisters. Once, she sent me a video of her opening a care package from our parents. Lavender candles, new shoes, a handwritten card that ended with, "We're so proud of you." I didn't respond to that message. What could I say? That I was proud of her too, even if it killed me a little? I wasn't jealous of Ella. I was angry at the system that built her wings with the pieces of mine. But still, I didn't let myself drown in it. I had come too far to collapse. I worked, I studied. I failed a few times, and I got back up. There were nights I seriously considered dropping out. I felt invisible most of the time, just a girl in a hoodie dragging herself through campus, unnoticed and unfavored. But every test I passed, every shift I endured, every dollar I saved, it became armor. And I wasn't alone. There were people who saw me. My roommate, Nia, would sneak me her leftover groceries. A professor who once found me sleeping in the library gave me a book and said, "You've got grit, Iris." A classmate named Jorge let me borrow his textbook for an entire semester without ever making me feel like a charity case. They didn't have to love me like family. They chose to treat me like I mattered. And that meant something. By my final year, I had paid down a chunk of my student debt and earned a research fellowship. I still worked, still struggled, but I had momentum. And I started to realize something that surprised me. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building a life I could be proud of. A life no one could take credit for. Meanwhile, my parents posted about Ella's milestones on Facebook like it was their full-time job. "So proud of our girl," they wrote under a photo of her study abroad trip. No mention of me. No update on how their other daughter was quietly clawing her way toward the finish line. Sometimes I would stare at those posts and wonder if they even remembered I was graduating too. If they had any idea what it had cost me, what it had cost them. Because whether they realized it or not, every dollar they withheld, every time they told me I was strong instead of supported, they weren't just saving money, they were spending a relationship. And by the time graduation rolled around, there wasn't much left in that account. But I never said anything. I just kept going. That's what you do when you're the self-made one, right? You show up. You keep quiet. You act fine. Until one day you don't. The night before graduation, I couldn't sleep. It wasn't nerves. It wasn't excitement. It was something heavier, something colder. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling of my apartment, listening to the old pipes groan like they were cracking under pressure. Same as me. I had survived 4 years of this, of scraping, of hustling, of pretending that I wasn't hurt by the silence on the other end of the phone. For years of building a version of myself no one in my family had really bothered to know. And now the people who'd watched me from a distance, who had chosen that distance, were going to sit in a stadium and clap like they'd been part of the journey. They were coming. My mom had texted me 2 days before. "We'll be there. So proud of you, Iris. Love you." That was the first love you I'd gotten in months. I didn't reply. The ceremony was scheduled for 10 a.m., but I arrived hours early. I needed the quiet. I needed space to breathe. I sat alone in my cap and gown, staring at the rows of white chairs lined up on the field. The sky was overcast, like it couldn't decide whether to rain or shine. Fitting. When the crowds began to arrive, I kept my head down. Classmates squealed and hugged their families. Balloons bounced against the breeze. Parents held flowers, shouted names, waved at their kids like they were sending them off to space. I watched all of it like a movie I wasn't in. And then I saw them, my parents and Ella, walking together like a family. A family. Ella wore a white sundress and heels that sunk slightly into the grass. My mom was holding a bouquet. Pink lilies. My dad had his camera out. Their eyes scanned the sea of caps, smiling, searching. For her, I assumed. Always for her. But then my mom caught sight of me and waved, full arm, like we hadn't been quietly drifting apart for 4 years. My dad nodded, that proud dad face he used for public moments. Ella waved too, oblivious to the layers beneath the smile I forced back. I didn't wave. The ceremony began. Speeches were made. Names were called. I sat there, hands folded in my lap, feeling like I was floating above the entire event. Like I was watching some other girl live the version of my life, where she had parents who showed up in the middle, not just at the end. Then came the part one hadn't told anyone about. The student speaker. That year, they'd chosen someone not based on GPA or popularity, but on a blind essay submission about resilience. I hadn't expected to be picked. I'd written it in a haze of finals and emotional fatigue, raw and unfiltered. I hadn't used names, just the truth. And they chose me. So I walked to the podium, heart thudding like a bass drum, and looked out over the crowd. Thousands of faces. I found mine, Mom, Dad, Ella. Front row. Beaming. I cleared my throat, adjusted the mic. I'm not the kind of person who usually wins things, I began. I'm not the loudest voice, or the most connected. I didn't come here with a safety net. I came here with part-time jobs, scholarships, loan debt, and a lot of nights where I had to convince myself that I was worth the effort. A pause. I was told I was strong a lot, that I could handle things. And I want to say this just once, for anyone else who had to clap for other people while quietly stitching their own success behind the scenes. Being strong is not the same as being supported. There was a shift in the crowd, just enough that I knew they heard it. My journey wasn't easy. It wasn't photogenic, but it's mine. Every inch of it, earned without shortcuts. And today, I don't owe this degree to the people who show up at the finish line. I owe it to the ones who showed up in the middle. The professors who saw me when I was invisible. The friends who offered their couches. The strangers who said, "You've got this," when I didn't believe it myself. I looked down for a second, breathed. And if you're sitting out there, clapping for someone you never really supported, just know they remember that, too. Silence. Then slow applause. Not polite. Not loud. Thoughtful. I stepped down from the stage and didn't look toward the front row. But I saw them anyway, just in the edge of my vision. My dad had lowered the camera. My mom wasn't smiling anymore. Ella looked like she'd just realized something that made her deeply uncomfortable. Good. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't hiding it. I wasn't smoothing it over. I wasn't pretending that it hadn't cost me something to carry all this alone. I didn't burn the bridge. But I finally made them stand on the edge and look down. After the ceremony, there was the usual crowd surge, grads throwing caps, families swarming for photos, confetti someone definitely wasn't supposed to bring floating through the air. Everyone was smiling, laughing, crying happy tears. I stood off to the side by the refreshment tent, sipping lukewarm lemonade and trying to brace myself for what I knew was coming. Them. My parents found me first. My mom still held the bouquet, now slightly wilted from the sun, and my dad had slung his camera around his neck like a trophy. They were beaming, faces glowing with the pride I had once begged for. "Iris," my mom said, rushing in for a hug. That speech. Oh my God, wasn't it amazing, Greg? My dad nodded, still smiling. That was powerful. I didn't hug her back. I let her arms rest awkwardly around me before she pulled away. The air between us chilled slightly. "Thank you," I said flatly. I meant every word. They exchanged a quick glance. A flicker of discomfort, like maybe they'd heard something in the speech they weren't ready to admit was about them. Ella came up behind them, eyes wide. "That was so intense, Iris," she said. "Like, wow. You didn't even tell us you were speaking." "No," I said, meeting her gaze. "I didn't." Another beat of silence. My mom tried to smooth it over. "We're just so proud of you. All your hard work really paid off." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. I looked at them, standing there with their proud parent faces, bouquet in hand, camera ready, and realized they thought they could just show up now, and it would all be okay. Like their absence during the fight didn't matter, because they'd made it to the photo op. "You're proud?" I said quietly. My mom blinked. "Of course we are." I nodded. Once. Slowly. "Did you ever wonder how I paid for any of this?" They hesitated. My dad scratched the back of his neck. My mom tilted her head, smiling like this was some kind of heartwarming Q&A. "We figured you had scholarships," she said. "I did," I said. "And loans. And I worked 3 jobs at one point. There were nights I didn't eat dinner, so I could buy books. I borrowed clothes for interviews. I sold my plasma. And not once did either of you offer to help." The smiles vanished. My dad looked down. My mom opened her mouth, but nothing came out. You said Ella needed more help because she's sensitive. I continued, my voice steady but low. So you saved for her, gave her a car, sent her care packages. And you told me I'd be fine because I was strong. You said it like it was a compliment, but really, it was just an excuse to give me less. Iris, my mom whispered. I'm not angry anymore, I said. I'm not even surprised. I just want you to understand something. They were both staring at me now, pale, wordless. I didn't get here because of you. I got here in spite of you. That was the moment. The exact second it hit them. Their faces didn't just pale, they collapsed. My mom's mouth parted like she wanted to cry, but didn't know if she was allowed. My dad shifted his weight, unable to meet my eyes. Ella was stone still, silent, the smile long gone. And then came the part one hadn't even planned. I reached into my tote bag and pulled out a stack of small envelopes, thank you cards. I'd written them the night before to the people who had shown up. My professors, my boss at the cafe, the librarian who kept the study room open late for me. I handed one to a passing classmate, another to a professor walking by. I gave them out like tokens of truth. But I didn't hand one to my parents. My mom watched, her hands fluttering awkwardly at her sides. You didn't write one for us? I looked her straight in the eye. I didn't have anything to thank you for. My dad cleared his throat. That's not fair. No, I said. What wasn't fair was being told that my struggles were a strength, that my pain was a personality trait, that I didn't need help because I didn't ask for it. They didn't respond. Not really. Just stood there, stunned, like they'd suddenly realized they weren't the heroes in my story. Maybe they never had been. And I didn't storm off. I didn't yell or cry or make a scene. I just adjusted the strap on my bag, smoothed my gown, and walked away. Not with drama. Not with a mic drop. Just with dignity. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to scream your truth. It's to stop letting people pretend they didn't already hear it. They didn't follow me. I had half expected they might. That my mom would rush after me, grasp my arm, say she didn't know, that she was sorry. That my dad would finally look me in the eyes, tell me he was proud and ashamed, and that both could be true at once. Even Ella, I thought maybe she'd say something, anything, to prove she finally understood the gap between us wasn't about rivalry. It was about reality. But none of them moved. That was the loudest silence I'd ever heard. I walked to the far edge of the field, sat down on the concrete steps near the parking lot, and let myself breathe, really breathe, for the first time in years. The sun had finally come out. It was warm on my back. My hands were still shaking, just a little, from everything I had said. But beneath the tremble was a strange calm. It was done. And not just the ceremony, not just the degree. The performance was done. The pretending. The careful edits I had made to myself to stay palatable. The guilt I carried every time I wanted more than what I was given. The invisible leash I wore, trying to be the good daughter, the low-maintenance one, the girl who could take care of herself without making anyone else uncomfortable. It all ended right there on those concrete steps. I got a text from Nia, my roommate. Just one line. Saw your speech. Damn. You did that. I smiled. Not because it was flattering, but because it felt real. Honest. Like someone saw the version of me I had buried under years of polite restraint. A few minutes later, I checked my phone again. A text from my mom had come in. We didn't know you felt that way. We're sorry you're hurting. Hope we can talk when things calm down. We love you. No call. Just a message. I didn't reply. Not because I hated her. Not because I wanted to punish them. But because, for once, I didn't feel obligated to make it easier for them. I had carried that responsibility for so long, that emotional buffer, that instinct to absorb the discomfort, so no one else had to feel it. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I had become someone else. Someone I built from the ground up. And she didn't need permission to set boundaries. She didn't need to explain her silence. Graduation didn't just mark the end of college for me. It marked the end of waiting for something from them that would never come. Recognition. Remorse. An apology with weight. Sometimes people hurt you, and they don't mean to. But sometimes they do mean to just a little. Sometimes they convince themselves it's fine because you're strong, and it's more comfortable to believe that than to admit they left you out in the cold and called it character building. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. A week later, I moved into a new apartment with a real bed and a door that closed without sticking. I framed my diploma, not because I cared about the paper, but because I knew what it cost. Every late night, every skipped meal, every unspoken word. I earned that frame. I earned the silence I now keep between me and my parents. Because the thing about silence, it's not always empty. Sometimes it's full of everything you never said because you finally stopped needing to be heard by the people who refused to listen in the first place. And in that silence, I found something better than closure. I found myself.